as time travel gets more and more sophisticated, you can go back and forth in time while you're talking to people.
Einstein's theory of relativity creates the possibility to travel through a portal.
Paul Amadeus Dienach claimed he spent a year in the year 3906, only to return after mysteriously vanishing for 2 decades. He wasn't an inventor or a mad scientist, just a simple teacher, swallowed by time itself. When he woke up from a coma in 1922, he brought back with him visions of a future shaped by nuclear wars, alien encounters, and radical human evolution. But it wasn't all peace and enlightenment. Tune in as we uncover the terrifying truth behind the architect, a figure that could shatter humanity's future forever, a mystery that Dienach desperately wished to forget, a future beyond belief. Paul wasn't some kind of inventor or mad scientist. He was just a guy, teaching languages, trying to make it through life. But when he fell into a deep coma at 1921, something unusual happened. One of the most mind-bending things he discovered was the evolution of the human mind. Around the year 3000, humans developed a new sense, a kind of spiritual awareness called Nebuwork. It allowed them to perceive a deeper level of existence and feel an instant connection with something bigger. At first, it overwhelmed people. Some even died from the sheer intensity of it. But eventually, it became part of everyday life. Humans evolved into what he called Homo Occidentalis Novus, a new version of mankind that had moved past selfishness and greed. They saw the world through a lens of unity and spiritual enlightenment. But then he discovered a secret, one that could shatter everything: the architect. But let's not get too dreamy here. He also found this future a bit unsettling. The people seemed almost childlike in their simplicity, like they had lost something essential, maybe the drive, the passion that makes us human today. And when he asked how they'd handle a threat from, say, aliens, the answer was surprisingly calm. They'd had contact with extraterrestrials before, but the beings just observed from a distance. No wars, no invasions, just a quiet acknowledgement that they weren't alone in the universe. He also found a personal connection in this future world. He met a woman named Sylvia, and together they traveled to a place that brought back memories of his youth, a hill where he had once shared a tender moment with a girl named Anna. Sylvia, without knowing, repeated the same gesture Anna had made all those years ago, weaving a wreath of flowers and placing it on her head. It was like a message from across time, a reminder that maybe, just maybe, some promises transcend centuries. Then just as suddenly as he had arrived in the future, he found himself waking up back in 1922 in his own body, in his own time. He wrote everything down in his diary, every strange detail, every glimpse of what might be waiting for us thousands of years from now. Was it all real? A vivid dream? A hoax? We might never know. His diary vanished, his story fading into mystery. Some people think it's all a made-up tale, borrowing a bit too heavily from sci-fi of the time. Others believe he really did take a peek into the future, giving us a glimpse of what we could become. The details of his story are astonishing. According to him, the 20th and 21st centuries were just the beginning of a series of massive upheavals that ultimately reshaped human society. By the 23rd century, Earth had experienced devastating wars, resource shortages, and environmental collapse. The nuclear war of the 24th century was the final breaking point, a catastrophic event that almost wiped humanity out, sparing only a fraction of the population in scattered regions around the globe. The survivors came together, realizing that in order to survive, they needed to change everything about how they lived and interacted with one another. It was from this crucible of destruction that the seeds of the society he encountered were sown. By the 25th century, a new world government had emerged, one that sought to end the cycle of greed, conflict, and destruction. Initially, this global government was corrupt, ruled by the wealthy and powerful. But as the centuries passed, it began to change. Scientists, philosophers, and humanitarians gradually took the reins of leadership. By the time he arrived in the 39th century, this government had evolved into a system that prioritized human welfare, knowledge, and spiritual growth above all else. The people of this future society did not work for money or personal gain. Instead, they worked for the collective good. Each person was expected to contribute to society for 2 years of their life, starting at the age of 17. After those 2 years, they were free to pursue whatever interested them, art, science, music, or simply enjoying life. All their needs were provided for by the community. There was no poverty, no hunger, no competition for resources. It was a world built on abundance and mutual care. This radical shift in human behavior didn't happen overnight. It took centuries of trial and error, of struggle and learning. The nuclear war of the 24th century had left deep scars, and for generations, people lived in fear of repeating the same mistakes. It was this fear that drove them to change, to create a society where the well-being of the many was more important than the wealth of the few. He found this future both inspiring and unsettling. On the one hand, it was a world free from the greed and conflict that had plagued humanity for so long. On the other hand, the people seemed almost too content, like they had lost some essential spark, some drive that made them human. They were happy, but their happiness was calm and quiet, without the passion and intensity that he remembered from his own time. It was as if they had moved beyond the need for excitement, for struggle, for the highs and lows that defined human life in the past. Paul's journey didn't end here. He discovered even more about humanity in Mysterious Visitors. Paul Dienach's glimpse of an alien-touch future. When he asked how these future humans would handle a threat from an external source, like an alien invasion, the answer was surprising. They had already made contact with extraterrestrial beings, but these beings were not interested in conquest or conflict. They observed humanity from a distance, and the people of Earth were content to let them be. There was no fear, no paranoia, just an understanding that they were not alone in the universe, and that was enough. His diary disappeared, and with it, the details of his extraordinary journey. Some believe his story was nothing more than a work of fiction, inspired by the science fiction of the time. Others think he truly experienced something beyond our understanding, a glimpse into a future that may still lie ahead of us. Whatever the truth, his story continues to captivate and inspire, inviting us to imagine what might be possible if we could only find a way to evolve beyond our current limitations. Technological advancements played a significant role in shaping this future society. By the 31st century, automation had reached a level where most manual labor was no longer necessary. Machines handled the production of goods, allowing people to focus on more meaningful pursuits. This shift led to a reevaluation of what work meant and why people did it. Instead of working to survive, people worked to contribute to the well-being of the community, to learn and to grow. The concept of work as a burden had disappeared, replaced by the idea of work as a form of self-expression and a way to connect with others. The Nebel work, or the awakening of the new sense, was perhaps the most significant change of all. It was not something that could be taught or learned in the traditional sense. It was an experience, a moment of profound realization that changed everything about how a person saw the world. For those who experienced it, the Nebel work was both beautiful and terrifying, a glimpse into a reality that was far greater than anything they had known before. It was this new sense that allowed humanity to evolve into Homo occidentalis novus, a new species that was no longer bound by the limitations of the past. By the 39th century, the people of Earth had created a society that was truly global. There were no borders, no nations, just one human community, working together for the common good. The old divisions of race, religion, and nationality had faded away, replaced by a sense of unity and shared purpose. People lived in harmony with the natural world, using technology to enhance their lives without harming the environment. It was a world that seemed almost utopian, but it had been built on the lessons learned from centuries of struggle and sacrifice. Whether or not Paul Amadeus Dienach truly experienced a journey to the future, his story invites us to imagine what might be possible if we are willing to evolve, not just technologically, but spiritually and morally as well. It challenges us to think about what kind of world we want to create and what we are willing to do to make that vision a reality. The future is not something that happens to us. It is something we create, one choice at a time. And perhaps, just perhaps, the possibilities are endless. Dienach's tale reads like a mix of a sci-fi novel, a spiritual journey, and a guidebook for future humanity. He wasn't just talking about new gadgets and cool technology. No, he went deeper. He saw humans evolve past the point of being obsessed with material things and instead becoming more connected, spiritually and mentally. Sounds like quite the leap, right? Here we are struggling to recycle our plastic bottles, and Dienach's future humans are out there focusing on connecting their consciousness to some cosmic level. The story really makes you wonder if humanity can ever get there, or if it's just wishful thinking. It's one of those things that sounds far-fetched, but you can't help but find it intriguing. He describes this future where all our current messes, wars, inequality, environmental disasters have been solved. People have overcome selfishness and greed. It's like everyone collectively decided to grow up and work together. Is that even possible? I mean, think of how humans have always been. It's always been me first, right? Dienach's version of the future is almost too good to believe. It's a vision where humans are less about how much money can I make and more about how can we evolve together. No pollution, no money fights, just one big happy global family. To be honest, it sounds nice, but kind of naive. Imagine living in a society that isn't driven by greed, where every person's focus is on improving not just themselves, but the community as a whole. Dienach describes this future as a world where we've managed to leave behind the things that currently weigh us down. Our desire for material goods, our constant need to compete, our inability to look beyond our own self-interest. Instead, people in the future focus on harmony, on collective growth, and on a kind of spiritual progress that's almost impossible for us to imagine today. The way Dienach tells it, humanity in the future has figured out that true happiness doesn't come from having more stuff, but from being more connected to each other and to the universe at large. To give you an idea of how different this future is, Dienach talked about how technology was used in completely new ways, not just for convenience, but for enhancing the human experience on a deeper level. There were no more factories polluting the air, no massive corporations trying to squeeze every penny out of people. Instead, technology served to support the well-being of everyone. Imagine a world where machines take care of all the mundane, day-to-day tasks, leaving people free to explore what really matters: art, philosophy, science, and spiritual growth. It's a kind of utopia that's hard to believe could ever happen, but the details Dienach provides make it feel strangely possible. He describes a society that's figured out how to balance technology with nature, how to use advancements to create a better, more fulfilling life for everyone, rather than just a select few. Seeing the future wasn't just about technology, it was also about how people might change in amazing ways. A dream of a spiritually enlightened humanity. His future isn't just about technology, though. It's about how people have changed. Imagine if we could somehow get rid of all the things that divide us today. Our fear, our distrust of one another, our need to always be better than the person next to us. In this future, people aren't driven by ego. They don't measure success by how much wealth they've accumulated or by their social status. Instead, they measure it by how much they've grown spiritually, by how connected they feel to the world and the people around them. It's a complete shift from how we live today, and it's one that's both incredibly appealing and incredibly difficult to imagine. And that's one of the most interesting things about his story. It makes you wonder if maybe, just maybe, we're capable of more than we think. Maybe we could one day reach a point where we're not so focused on ourselves, where we see the bigger picture and understand that we're all in this together. It's a vision that's hopeful, but also challenging, because it forces us to confront the fact that we're not there yet, not even close. But Dienach's story suggests that maybe if we can figure out how to change the way we think, how to change the things we value, we could get there. One of the most striking aspects of his vision is the way people in the future relate to the environment. Today, we're faced with massive environmental challenges: climate change, deforestation, pollution. It often feels like we're on a runaway train, heading for disaster. But in Dienach's future, humanity has managed to turn things around. The environment isn't something to be exploited for resources. It's something to be protected and cherished. People have found a way to live in harmony with nature rather than constantly fighting against it. Imagine cities that blend seamlessly with the natural world, where green spaces are everywhere, and where the air and water are clean because people finally realize that the health of the planet is directly tied to their own well-being. It's a future that feels almost impossible when you look at the state of things today, but it's one that's worth striving for. Another interesting aspect of Dienach's story is the way people in the future approach knowledge and education. Today, education is often seen as a means to an end. You learn to get a job, to make money, to secure your place in the world. But in Dienach's future, learning is about something much deeper. It's about understanding the universe, about growing as a person, and about contributing to the collective knowledge of humanity. Imagine if education wasn't something you did for a few years before starting your real life, but something that was an ongoing, lifelong pursuit. In this future, people are always learning, always seeking to understand more about themselves and the world around them. It's a society that values curiosity and personal growth above all else. And that's a pretty inspiring idea. The future Dienach describes also has a very different relationship with technology. Today, we often see technology as something that separates us from each other. Everyone's staring at their phones, interacting more with screens than with people. But in Dienach's vision, technology is something that brings people together. It's used to enhance human connection, not replace it. Imagine a world where technology helps us communicate more deeply, where it's used to foster understanding and empathy rather than just to entertain or distract. It's a completely different way of thinking about the role of technology in our lives, and it's one that feels like it could lead to a much healthier, happier society. Dienach's story isn't just a vision of a better future. It's also a challenge to us in the present. It forces us to ask ourselves what kind of future we want to create. Are we going to continue down the path we're on, with all its division, greed, and short-sightedness? Or are we going to try to build something better? Dienach's vision might seem far-fetched, but it's also a reminder that the future is in our hands. It's not something that just happens to us. It's something we shape every single day through our actions and our choices. What makes his story so compelling is the way it combines hope with a very real challenge. It's not just a fantasy about a perfect world, it's a call to action. It's a reminder that if we want to create a better future, we have to start by changing ourselves. We have to let go of our obsession with material things, our constant need to compete, and our fear of the unknown. We have to start seeing ourselves as part of something bigger, a global community, a species that's capable of incredible things if we can just get out of our own way. Could we ever evolve past our current nature? Or are we destined to repeat history's mistakes? Leave your opinion in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.